I will go ahead and call today's meeting to order for February 5th, 2020. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Palmer? Here. Commissioner Chang?
Here.
Commissioner McMahon?
Here.
Commissioner Ramos? Here. Commissioner Rucker?
Here.
Vice Chair Greaves?
Here.
Chair Lujan?
Here. With that case, let's stand for Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Ramos, will you lead us in pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and for the approval of the agenda, are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing as there are none, would someone like to motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
I second.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, agenda passes. Then to the approval of minutes, are there any changes to the minutes from December 4th, 2019? Seeing as there are none, we'll go ahead and a motion.
A motion to approve the minutes for December 4th, 2019.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. For correspondence, Director Walker?
We have none, Madam
None.
Chair.
All right, thank you. Then moving on to item 6, presentations for Recreation Expo by Recreation Manager Melody Ocampo.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. It is my pleasure to present to you about our upcoming Recreation Expo. As many of you know, we've bumped it up to earlier in the year. It's traditionally been in April, and we will be hosting it at the end of this month on February 29th. We typically do some fanfare, but we thought we'd keep it short and sweet for you and show you a commercial that we created that I personally am quite proud of, and you're about to see why. Oh, come on.
Don't keep your kids caged up this summer. The city of Vacaville is host to summer camps small and large, where your child can engage their passions, whether that's exploring the arts, swimming all day, or getting down and dirty in the mud, or with science. Stop by the Recreation Expo on Saturday, February 29th from 8 a.m. to noon at its new location, the Ulatis Community Center. 10% off when you register one child for 3 or more camps. We'll have special drawings, prizes, demonstrations from our great instructors, and did I mention that discount? So stop by the Big Top Saturday, February 29th at the Ulatis Community Center, and don't let your kids run wild this summer.
Yay. Good job,
Thank
Melody.
you. Oh, sorry.
Enough of it.
I just want to give a quick shout out to Markham Elementary for letting us film there. Oh, I'm sorry, Sierra Vista. Wow, I was driving by Markham earlier. So they're on my brain. But they were very generous in letting us film at their location and obviously use some of their students. We had a lot of fun.
Awesome.
And with that being said, any questions about the expo coming up or commercial? Answer those.
Yes, we have one from Commissioner Ramos.
Yes.
How can we support you at the expo?
I think just letting people know about it. We have that video out on our Facebook page. Share it, let people know. This is the great time to be first in the door to sign up for our camps that are happening this summer. As you saw, there is a great discount, so tell people about it. That's the best support I think that we could ask for. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Chang.
And Melody, you have a booth for commissioner, right? A table, I mean.
We always have a booth that is open for
And
our
also
commissioners.
the consultant will be there to present the park and the park strategy planning, correct?
I would have to confirm that, but they're always welcome.
I think that was last year where we had the consultant come out and take some feedback from the community as to what they would like to see in the new parks coming about. So.
Correct.
That is true, yeah. I'm not sure if there's anyone planned to schedule to come out this year, but if that is necessary, then.
That would be nice if they could do it, I think, so that they could get the feedback from the community right away.
We can definitely have a survey for community input. I don't know that would be a consultant, but absolutely. we always do evaluations and we can have something available. And we always are soliciting for information from the community about what they want to see. So we can, do something a little bit more official. I'll make a note of that.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's, just to kind of depending upon what, is the consultant already completed their gathering of information, the gathering of information phase?
I'm going to defer to, go
Director
ahead,
Walker.
Carrie. I see you jumping in.
Yes, in
But I think
terms
they're
of their official surveying all through all the pop-ups and the online survey, they have, but as Melody indicated, it's always a good opportunity when you have a, diverse crowd showing up to an event to get some feedback, so.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? All right. Great, well, thank you so much, and thank you for the festive video. We love it.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
All right, now to moving on to item 7, which is business from the floor. This is the time to address the commission with issues that are not on the agenda that are within the commission's subject matter jurisdiction. We have 3 minutes per speaker or group per government code. Anyone to speak? Oh, yeah, come on.
Turn the mic on.
Oh, great, thank you.
Good evening, fellow commissioners and city staff. My name is Al Revelo, and I'll come introduce you. Say your name, please.
Emily. My name is Gracie.
And together we are citizens, residents of Vacaville, and we coming here just kind of in support of the sports fields that are possible and are exciting coming up for the city of Vacaville. We couldn't make it to the city council meeting that was in the past. Actually, myself, I was hosting 2 business people from the UK representing the Premier's clubs over there. And it was coincidentally that they come here and they look at this. We took them all over the city. We took them all over this area, showed them about what soccer has to offer. And they said, you guys are in the middle of a gold mine. You don't know how good you have it. So these sports fields definitely are something that you could look east, west, north, and west of us, proven models. So it really is a turnkey opportunity for the city of Vacaville to really benefit from not only providing soccer players fields, but just the economic impact as well. The clubs that these girls play in, North Bay FC, we play and we practice in Sassoon because there's no fields here in Vacaville. And probably I'd say 50 to 60% of the club are City of Vacaville residents. So 4 fields in City of Vacaville is definitely not enough. We need a lot more. And we definitely have the numbers to show it. And I'd love to continue this conversation with you guys, hopefully in a future date. But that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, you guys, for coming out.
Yep.
All right, great. And moving on, or anyone else to speak during business from the floor? Okay, seeing as there are none, we'll go ahead and close business from the floor. Let's see, let me make sure I get all that. Oops. Moving on to item 8, Parks and Recreation Commission 2020 meeting calendar. This one, by simple motion to adopt the meeting calendar for 2020, basically the couple months that we'll have off, and guess I'll go ahead and give it over to Director Walker.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. Not a lot to announce here. The staff report includes the calendar, and one of the things that I wanted to make a note of and share with the commission is to make sure that you are aware now about those Friday closures of both City Hall and the Park and Rec Commission administrative offices.
Are they closed every Friday or?
No, it's every other Friday. And
Every other Friday,
there's-
okay.
Yeah, and there's a calendar in your packet that actually identifies the Fridays that were closed.
Gotcha. Thank you. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Chang?
It closed on every alternate Fridays because of budget, or?
Actually, it was something that there were a lot of surveys that went out to employees, actually, and with a focus on employees who have been here for 5 years or less. So it was something that came out of our Human Resources Department because there's been a real struggle with attaining employees and retaining employees, and a lot of cities have gone to this. It's an incentive. And so that's kind of how this came about.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Palmer?
I should also mention, I'm sorry, even though offices are closed on those Fridays, the hours have expanded. The Monday through Thursday hours of those, well, all our hours every day are now from 8 to 5:30, where we were had a 8:30 to 5 day previously.
Pretty good.
Thank you. Commissioner Palmer?
I just had a quick question for staff. Well, I was trying to catch them before they left. That's not a league that's here in Vacaville, is that correct? They said they were Vacaville soccer, but they're not the Vacaville.
I think he said that the majority of their league is made up of Vacaville residents, but because of the few fields, they're playing in Suisun.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that they weren't one of our leagues that we're representing now. Do you know who that person is, in other words? Director Walker.
The speaker, Al Arab, I'm sorry, will mispronounce his name, but he also runs the Just for Kicks program throughout like all of, I think the Just for Kicks program is in Benicia, I think it's in Fairfield, it's here in Vacaville, and so that program is run throughout.
Not through the city programs. Is it?
Yes,
through the
it
city?
is.
Okay.
Yes.
So he is one of the instructors from the city programs, but he's not one of the leagues.
Right.
That's what I wanted. Okay, just want to make sure.
Although I will say, to elaborate, there is, he does run a like 5v5, 5 versus 5 league here in the city through the Park and Rec Department.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding our meeting calendar? Commissioner Greaves?
I'm ready to provide a motion.
All right. Seeing as there are no other questions or comments, we can entertain a motion.
By simple motion, I propose we adopt the meeting calendar for 2020.
All right, motion on the floor.
Second?
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? All right, go ahead. We have our new 2020 meeting calendar then. Moving on to item 8B, which is the presentation. This is an information item only. It's for capital improvement project or the CIP process. And that's by presenter Socorro Wetzi.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. This is just a quick overview of the CIP process. So the first step in the CIP process is to develop, the department develops and prioritizes list of projects. This could be anything from, a leaky roof, emergency type of projects. And then once that list is developed, then we present it here to the commission. And then after that, all the departments submit all the projects to the city manager's office, and then it gets citywide. They get prioritized by different departments. So it's a citywide project list, not necessarily our department. And then once that prioritization is complete, then it's presented to the council for adoption. And this is the Parks and Recreations projects that are funded by external parties. So for example, somebody wants to come and do a volunteer project in one of the parks for improvements. The external party will submit a formal proposal to us, and then based on what the proposal entails, it either will be an encroachment permit or a volunteer form, depending on the actual project, or it could be that we can take on the project ourselves. Once that is determined, if it is an encroachment permit, then a plan is submitted to Public Works Engineering Services for review. If it is a volunteer type of project, then a volunteer form will need to be completed. Any questions?
Can I, like, so when you say volunteer form, is that like to volunteer to make changes to something or like?
So the volunteer form is, they're volunteering the services, so
Okay.
it's not necessarily contracted out or anything. It's volunteers that are actually doing the work.
Gotcha. Thank you. Commissioner Palmer.
So when you say volunteers, that's like the the Boy Scouts? Would that be something like that when they want to do a project and they're volunteering? Would that go under volunteer?
Correct.
Okay. So if there is a need that the public is asking for, what is their process? Do they go, from what you just said, do they go through city staff? Do they fill out like a needs list? How does staff determine what comes to commission or city council?
So do you mean in the beginning for CIP process, or do you mean for projects that are funded by external parties? Because they're two different processes.
If there's something that the community is asking for from our city, they're going to approach the city, right? And they're going to say, there's a need. I understand, and that does make sense. They're filling out an application. They're explaining to you the need. They're explaining the need. They're showing the need. They're presenting their case. From there, where does it go?
And we'll put it on our list. We'll put it on our list. We'll present it to commission, and then they get sent over to city manager's office, and then they get prioritized and funded that way, depending on with citywide projects.
Would there ever be a time that something gets on the list and doesn't? Like, could it stop at city level, or does the CIP request come to us as a commission or city council every time?
Our department list will come to you we will present it to the commission. After that, we send it over to the city manager's or city office, and then depending on the funding, because we do have several funds, we have this general fund, we have DIF, we have Measure M, just depending on the availability of funds, that's how they will prioritize, and depending on the level of, these are citywide projects, not necessarily just our department, it's all the city departments.
Sure.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner McMahon?
Thank you, Socorro, very much.
Oh, whoops, hold on. Give me 1 second as can you put it in again? Oh, there it is.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Socorro, very much. So just so I'm clear, so when you present, the staff will determine, prioritize what needs to be fixed during the CIP process. And when you present it to the commission, that's presentation only, correct?
Correct.
To the commission. Okay, very, very good. And then also, just so I'm clear on the volunteer project process. I've heard from different groups that they have offered to do different projects, say at one of our sports fields, whether it's just shade structure, or lighting or trees. If they supply, let's say they have the talent to do that. There's a lot of talented parents out there. They may be licensed contractors. If they supply the supplies, how does that fall into this process? And if they do the work, so the supplies are supplied by them and they do the work, what is the approval process from the city?
So if it's a volunteer effort, they would need to submit the volunteer forms, and that goes through our engineering services. They will determine all that, whether, depending on the plans they submit, whether it ends up going through to council for approval in the end, but they have to submit all the plans and have it approved by engineering services before it goes to council.
Okay. What would be reasons that it would not be accepted by our staff or public works or the council? I mean, if we've got a group of people that are absolutely qualified to do the work and they're supplying the materials, is there any reasons that the city would say no?
That I don't know.
I guess it would depend what the project is.
Yes.
Like,
I was just going to add that some of the things that would be taken into consideration are the level of liability and possibly, dealing with our internal unions.
Right.
Hugh might want to touch base on this as well. Hugh manages and supervises multiple volunteer projects. A lot of them, again, with Boy Scouts or organized. Travis, I think Air Force Base, not too long ago, painted restrooms at one of the parks. So I don't know, Hugh, if you want to add anything else in terms of process and or how decisions are made regarding whether or not a project will or won't or can't move forward with volunteers.
Right. So one of the questions that comes up right away is, does the city even want that item, that project, whatever it is? In most cases, I don't think that's a problem. Usually it's something that the public has been asking for, but we're very concerned about the liability. So if there was, if it's a structure or something like, we had a situation where there was shade added onto a bleacher without any approvals or anything, a bunch of guys got together, and I don't know if they welded it on or what, but that's a concern for us, because if it were to fly off in a storm, it could injure a lot of people. So we would want to see drawings that are approved, stamped engineer drawings if necessary, depending upon the level of the project. So that would be just approving what it is, the description of it. Then secondly, who's doing it? And Carrie mentioned the need for insurance. If it's a licensed contractor, usually their coverage will cover that sort of thing. We've had people bring heavy equipment on and do things as a volunteer and stuff, but it's always with their liability coverage.
Okay.
Did I answer your question? I feel like I skipped something maybe.
It's nice to know that the opportunity is there. So if we have a group of residents that want to do a project at one of our sports fields or at one of our parks that's going to benefit their organization, the process is there. So it's just a matter of getting through the process, approved by whichever staff organization it is, and then approved by the council, correct?
If it's a minor thing, I wouldn't say it would go to the council. Depends upon what it is.
Let's
Depends
say
upon the
it's a
size.
shade structure at a baseball field.
If it was a minor shade structure, I don't see that going to council. I mean, that's, I don't know, Carrie, do you disagree with that?
And sometimes it depends on if the project is something temporary or permanent.
Oh, yeah.
The level that it rises to, the impact on the facility. So,
Or if
a
it's
lot of times
permanent.
that determines where it goes, who the decision-making body is.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hugh.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Chang?
I agree with Hugh on the liability and insurance, but what you say about the liability and insurance of the volunteer, I think when we have volunteer coming involving any project, we have to consider the liability issue, and also whether they have insurance, and also whether they are professional
right.
or they are licensed. And the other thing I don't agree is, even though you say it's minor, how minor it is, if anything happens, is serious.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we have to take it very seriously. And what I'm hearing here is, my question to you is, do we have a procedure guide, in having someone to volunteer? Let's say someone step into your office and say, I want to volunteer. Do you have a form for them to fill in? And then do you have to have a checklist? And what is the next step? And who is the decision authority? And do you have a procedure guide of this?
We do have a volunteer form for that, and it does ask several questions. And I think, Reggie, might be a little bit more familiar with the actual form.
Yeah, we have a volunteer application, but that's more program related and not related to projects. So if someone wanted to volunteer for a program, that's a little different than volunteer for a project. if you have a league or someone, an outside entity that wants to do some kind of improvements, yeah, they would have to go through a vetting process through the city. And it probably would start with our department, and then we take it from there, depending on what it is. One thing that comes to mind that we did one year where one of the leagues wanted to put something simple like a pitcher's mound on one of the fields at Keating, which it wouldn't work for some of the other leagues year round. And so we said, well, we can't do it because it works for you for your season, but year round it doesn't work. So we compromised and said, okay, if you're willing to pay the manpower to take it down after you're done with your season, and then you can do it. So it depends on the level of the project. So some of these things can be done really at the staff level. Then if it's a very, it's a bigger project, like I think Hughes, the boxes with the birds at Lagoon Valley that came through the commission and got approved and so on and so forth, that's more of that's a larger project that probably would need to be approved at this commission. But some of the things can be handled at the staff level that are small like that. We can handle with the leagues.
No, what my question is, do you have something on your book, on your shelf and saying this is a procedure guide? Step 1, step 2, step 3, and a flow chart, and so that everybody know what to do when someone come in and say, I want to volunteer. All right.
Well, as far as for projects, that all goes through engineering services. So we don't really handle that. We first do receive the request, and depending on the request, we will forward over to engineering services for them to handle that process.
So, yeah, so for this one, just to clarify too, so this is projects funded by external parties to volunteer to make some sort of adjustment or addition to city to city land that's going to maybe aid in whatever the city's goals or their goals are. And so just to summarize too, so the capital improvement projects process, the department develops and prioritizes the list of the projects. What is the process for getting on the department list of projects? Is there, would they do kind of the same thing where maybe submit a proposal and talk about why it should be a part of the CIP?
Yes, I can submit a request to us, to the staff, and then we can definitely put it on our list.
Okay, great. So it looks like there's two routes that one can take. One is submitting, or both, which would either include some sort of formal or informal process to both ways. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Commissioner Palmer?
I like the idea of what Commissioner Chang was saying about a procedures list. Is there a way that we can talk about that? Having maybe city put together something? I don't know if anybody else would be interested in having that, but I do like his idea.
Are you guys talking about a list for individual volunteers coming into the city, or?
No, just a procedures list.
For projects, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So that we know, so somebody comes to us and says, we asked the city for this and they're not doing anything. Well, we could say, well, where are you on this list of procedures? What's your steps? Have you done these steps? And put the accountability on the person asking for it, the person's asking for it, as well as staff to cover themselves and say, well, they haven't taken care of blah, 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 or they're at this step. I don't know if anybody else, but I do agree with Commissioner Chang.
Be interested. Commissioner Greaves.
Well, I'm not clear on Paul's suggestion for a checklist. Socorro said that building projects go to engineering, which is that's pretty much way above our pay grade. Volunteers for a program, I don't think we need a checklist for that. Staff is aware of what volunteers should be doing. So I'm not sure what the checklist is. I'm not clear on the purpose of the checklist.
So I think, what we're talking about for the volunteer I'm not sure, just to clarify. So we are talking about the projects funded by external parties, and when we say volunteer form, we're talking about, you first say, I want to make an adjustment, I want a new basketball hoop that the city can't afford to put in. So I put in a formal proposal, and then I do a volunteer form, which means I am volunteering to make this update to the basketball hoop on our own dime. So that's kind of the volunteer, and then, and complete the volunteer form going through that process. So I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page of what we're talking about when we say volunteer.
Right. So my concern here, asking staff for a checklist, if I don't know what you're asking staff, what kind of checklist you're asking staff to provide, I'm asking you to clarify now so I can say, yes, I think they should do that, or no, I don't think we should.
Just to give you examples, for example, Commissioner Sean brought it up. We want to help to provide more lightings, right? So then the thing is, of course, you go through the process and say, all right, you want to do that, you put out a proposal and then you fill out the form. But you also need to have a checklist to evaluate who is doing it. I think the area of responsibility had to be defined in the procedure guide, and also the process, so that at the end of it, if we turn them down, so at least we let them know that we do have a guide that we follow, and it's not that we just, based on our emotional decisions, say we don't want you to do it and we don't like you, so at least we do have a procedure guide to protect us, and the step by step, and at the end of it, who is the one, because a lot of time I heard everybody say, who is the one deciding, and we do not know. And if a guy is there, so we know the final authority is end up with either the city manager or somebody else, so at least we know. And then the checklist is to make sure that everything is listed down. Their license, insurance, life scan if needed, all right, and financial. So all these things, because if somebody come to me, I'm not able to think of all these things, all right? Unless there's a list in front of me. And then whoever, a procedure guide also is help. Today you are sitting in that position. Tomorrow somebody else, whoever step in, if you are not there, they look at the guide. They will continue to do the same thing. So a guide is pretty good for any operations. And especially for, volunteer. I can't worry about volunteer because, well, liability issue. The city cannot be sued because even though they say, oh, they're volunteer, but again, if anything happened, the city is responsible. It could be liable. So I think that is a big thing. I think nothing is minor here.
And if you go ahead.
If I might, the part of the problem, I hear what you're saying, and that could be very helpful, but I think we'd end up with a list that was about 2 pages long, trying to cover every possible contingency. Every person that comes in our office is a unique situation. Sometimes they might need to do, CEQA might need to be addressed, the environmental aspect of the project, or maybe it needs electrical, or maybe it needs, it's just a wide, maybe there's a conditional use permit on the property that we need to evaluate, might need to go in front of the Planning Commission. There's a wide range of things that we, staff, evaluate when somebody comes to us, and then we try to guide them, into the path. If they just, I get requests, everything from a scout group wanting to pick up trash, do we need a permit for that? And so I'll walk them through that, and to something very complicated. A good example to point to that's happened not too long ago was the scoreboard installation, which was provided, I believe, at no cost to the city, right, Reggie? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they installed it, but it was done with licensed installers, and it was inspected by the city to make sure that they actually followed the plans that they were going to do. The plans were approved. It was a much more detailed process. I think it might be a little hard for us to put together, just to kind of repeat myself, I'm sorry, I'm saying there's so many pieces to sort through that it's hard to anticipate that in a single list. It might boggle.
Procedure guide is not a single list. It's really it could be end up.
Seeing as this is an information item, we can't really take action right now, but I do want to have our city attorney chime in.
I just thought I could provide some additional input. So the encroachment permit process is very much a process where we do make sure that people encroaching on city property have the right insurance, right licensure, things like that. Volunteers, same thing. It depends on what you're volunteering to do. So there is, a lot of it comes through the law office to ensure that people, if we need some sort of formal agreement, that's in place. If it's something less formal, then we do have just something as simple as a volunteer waiver that we've created. So to speak to the concerns about making sure that the city is as protected from a liability standpoint, there are many processes in place that encroachment permits go through Public Works, so the processes may not be held by Parks and Recreation all the time. So I guess I don't know if it allays any fears in terms of liability and exposure to the city, but there are many different processes in place to ensure that there's proper permitting, proper insurance, proper licensure, compliance with workplace safety laws, all of those things. So essentially, part of our evaluation is when someone does work on a city project, they have to pretty much follow the same rules that the city has to follow when they do work. So we do a great deal of vetting through various processes, whether it be in Public Works, legal office, community development, Parks and Recreation. So I don't know if that speaks to those concerns regarding liability, but
Great.
That's what I can offer in terms of what we do.
Thank you for that, and I'm going to get to Commissioner Palmer. But basically, speaking on just adding additional comment regarding that process, this is all the city's stuff, and this is all the city's stuff. It's really, it seems that the action that an organization or individual would have to take, whether to get on the CIP or whether to submit to do a volunteer project, would be to first do a formal proposal, correct?
Correct.
So then I guess speaking to that question, to be clear, if that's the first action taken and submitting that to the city, and then the city does all the stuff related to all the legal and every and putting it on priorities, I guess for somebody who might not be used to submitting a proposal and may not know the kinds of things to include in a proposal, maybe is there a way to I think maybe that might be more what we're talking about, is to just clarify their role in the process, which would be to first submit the proposal, and on the city side to clarify what should be included in the proposal to get on that? No?
From what I was interpreting from
Commissioner Palmer, let me turn it on. Go ahead.
What I interpreted, or what I was getting out of what Commissioner Chang was saying is, for example, the leagues had asked about lighting years ago. And I don't know if they did this process. So if I turn to Socorro, I don't know how many years, just say you've been here for 2 years. Let's just say you've been here for 2 years. And I come to you and I say, the leagues asked about 5 years ago about the lighting. What's the status on that? Because I just found out that they still haven't been taking care of the lighting. You would say, well, I've only been here for 2 years and I don't see any notes on it, or I see an application, but I don't see how far it went. So what I'm saying is, this is what I got interpreted from Commissioner Chang, is if somebody submits a proposal, email or by paper to you, Socorro stamps it, it's entered, it's in now. It's going to engineering, it's going to whatever, but there's like a little process that we know that if I came to you again on this side and we said, Socorro, whatever happened to that lighting process? Oh, it got as far as engineering and we couldn't do it because blah, blah, blah. Like there was like a checklist or a procedures list.
Transparency in the process.
Yes, so that the perfect example is like if we have new staff turnover, where did it leave? Where did it go to? Where is it at? / somebody comes to us now and says, hey, we want to get lighting for blah, blah, blah. We've submitted the application. Commissioner, when we haven't heard anything, what's going on? Then we can say to Socorro, they said they submitted, and you could say they're on step 3. They're being submitted to engineering. We're waiting to hear back. Like, we sort of know the flow, like maybe a flow chart or some type of procedures list so that we can answer the community back by, and also staff is protected with, we've done the part and we're waiting. We're waiting for the public to do the next step or whatever. Sort of like an accountability of where it's at. That's what I was coming out with what you said.
Would that be this then, or
Well,
is there more to the?
It depends on, it depends whether they're asking for us to put it on our CIP list or they're gonna fund it. So if they're funding it, then it would go to the engineering services. So like, for example, specific projects such as lighting, and they're funding it completely, then it would go to engineering services and they would be the main contact with the leagues.
Okay, and again, that would be, we'd be veering off to go into that discussion because that's not what we're talking about right now. But.
And I guess
I don't want to veer off, but what I'm saying is if it is funded by the city and they're asking for the city, then there's the steps. Where are they on the steps type of thing? Because I'm staying.
Yeah, so let me kind of, and also to kind of go back to just trying to also gauge with the commission, is that where we want to head? Do we want to head in the direction of supporting, I guess, more transparency and public information and kind of analyze that a little bit more to see if that would be something that we would want to do for folks that do want to be put on the CIP or to submit a formal proposal. And I'm curious, anyone can chime in maybe if they want to. Commissioner Ramos?
I think there's certainly value in providing citizens who are interested in participating in this way some ability to a closed loop, I guess, so that they would know where in the process, if it's died on the vine, if it hasn't. But hearing from Hugh and Carrie, creating some massive step-by-step seems cumbersome and unnecessary. So a simplified, I submitted it to you, you submitted it to them, and that's where we are now, might be helpful.
Yeah, thank you for that. Anyone else? Oh, yeah, go ahead. Oh, we did. Never mind. Anyone else have any thoughts about this or whether we should continue the discussion? Because as this is an information item, but if we wanted to continue the discussion later on, Andrea, feel free to chime in if you want as to what the process is, if there does seem to be consensus. Oh, Director Walker.
One of the things that I just wanted to make sure was clear, because it's not included in the one flow chart about the projects that are funded by external parties. You know, during that process, again, if it's a project of significant magnitude and it's permanent and going to impact a facility, whatever that may be, that does come to the commission. That's your purview, and you need to be aware of and, you know, weigh in on those, you know, permanent happenings out at facilities. Where Hugh, a lot of times, again, is working with scouts who they might be reconstructing a bridge at Lagoon Valley Park, or again, Travis Air Force Base, you know, folks came over and painted the restrooms. He reports out that information out to you on a regular basis under park planner reports, but that is not something that we would come to the commission and get you to weigh in on.
Thank you. Commissioner Greaves, I'm curious. So since we're just closing this up, I know this is an informational item, and just seeing if what the commission believes, if we should add this to another agenda, or if we can sit there and say we are all in support of making the process a little bit more transparent, so that way folks know where they're at. Commissioner Greaves?
Do we know that the process isn't transparent to folks that bring requests to the city? I don't know. I've seen a lot of, you know, a lot of different projects come through the commission, and I just feel like you guys are getting in the weeds.
Commissioner Chang?
I'm sorry I started it. It's not saying that it's not transparent. I think
Clear.
I just recommend a procedure guide because I believe you all do have a system. No matter how you work, it's still a system there, you know. So it's just my recommendation, but I think I still respect the staff decisions. I mean, if you has a way of doing it, I think I respect that, you know. So I'm not saying that we have to force this down your throat to do it. I mean, it's not my intentions. All right. Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that. And clarify too, yes, I mean more clear, I guess. For the folks who maybe don't live out this every day, I love a clear understanding of what the process is for both sides, because I think working off the same information is beneficial for anyone, both parties involved. So I guess we can go ahead and close up this item for now, unless people want to add it to the next, add it to a future agenda. I mean, what are your thoughts? Consensus? There's a no. What do you think? No? What do you think? Commissioner Ramos? No comment. No? Okay, it looks like it's a consensus not to add it to a future agenda. And then we'll go.
Can I just add, one of the
Yes.
options maybe to have someone from Public Works Engineering come in the future too and kind of present, maybe elaborate more on the process and what, because our Public Works Engineering Department does administer capital improvement projects citywide. So if you'd like, we can request that someone from that department come and present on the capital improvement project process.
I think that's a good thing to know and to remember when we're getting to that process. And I think it looks like the first thing to do is basically to submit a formal proposal, and I'm sure staff would be in support of helping guide anybody to include the necessary information that needs to be included, so that way the city can move on with their process. So, all right, well, thank you very much. Thank you guys for your presentation. Moving on to item 9, committee reports to Play for All Task Force. They're getting a lot of work done out there. That's all I have to, they're really going at it out there and trying to create the Play for All park that we're really excited about. And then moving on to item 9B, facility feasibility study. And that's for Commissioners Chang and Commissioners Ramos. Would you guys like to chime in on that? Commissioner Chang.
All right, we have attended one meeting, right? I think this, we talked about the Davis Street Recreation Center and also the Georgia Duke and Three Oaks. I think we do discuss about the changes and the design have been, also they have done the several design, nothing finalized yet. I think the other thing also in the meeting I did bring up is the budgets. How much it's going to cost, and so they haven't. We have they have I think they give us a feasibility study on that, and but again, nothing is concrete right now. So I understand. I think Commissioner Sean was there. Thank you for presenting it to the City Council on our behalf. They're going to appoint 2 commissions from the Park and Commissioner from Park and Recreations, and also 2 City Council members to form an ad hoc committee. So.
Great, thank you so much. Commissioner Ramos, did you want to add anything?
Since our initial meeting, I think the only update is a very vigorous discussion of the study at City Council, ending up with these appointments coming up.
One more thing
Oh, yeah.
I forgot.
Go ahead.
There's one more thing I forgot to mention about Georgia Duke Complex. I think because of the restrictions of the area, because the Buckingham Charter School is moving in, so we cannot do any expansions, but we can do internal improvement. That's all. Yeah. Correct, Director?
Yeah, the only way that we could move forward with a significant expansion of Georgia Duke is actually to move in the direction of the park. And it would impact the park. So.
Great. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 9C, committee report for Alpatch Park Master Plan Committee with Commissioner McMahon.
Yes, thank you very much. Another exciting revision of a master plan of one of our local parks. We've been working on this for the past year or so. We're looking at adding additional field space for our softball group of people out there, as well as some basketball courts, a skate park, as well as a play structure, and just some beautification of that park. The next step that we're at is a public information presentation, which is scheduled for February 26th at 5:30 and tentatively planned to be at Foxborough Elementary. I believe that's still true.
What time?
At 5:30 on the 26th. And then also after that, our next commission meeting, we're planning, Jim Simpson is planning to do a presentation to the commission on the 1st of April. So there's some exciting stuff there. Again, we're looking to make this happen here, just adding some fields and some basketball courts. So it's going to be a good plan. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Moving on to item 10, reports of park planner Hugh Hesterman. Let me make sure.
Okay.
There you go.
Great, thank you. And good evening again. I got a list from Jim, my partner, as the park planner. He said that the presentation might be at the March 4th meeting. So at least that was as of this afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if I may just, he provided me with a few updates on a few other projects that he's been working on. So I'll run through them real quickly here. Regarding the Creek Walk permanent stage, the estimated cost and site impacts for constructing a permanent stage were just too high. And so the city has elected to, actually they authorized the purchase of a new mobile stage to replace the one that the city's been using. It's over 20 years old, and that was done at the January 8th meeting. And staff is working with the city attorney's office on a contract with Century Industries for that stage, and that's the same manufacturer as the one we currently are using. And it looks like a tentative delivery date is scheduled for the first week in June. Also, a report back regarding the Performing Arts Center patio. Looks like he's received some quotes for a new courtyard door and wrought iron fencing. You may recall that was to repair the broken wood lattice and everything. And he's working on getting some new concrete walk pricing. And he believes that the costs are currently within the budget for that project. Also reporting back regarding the Easterly Sports Field Park, Victus, the consultant, presented a pro forma feasibility assessment to the City Council at the January 26th council meeting, and recommended action was to authorize the mayor to appoint 2 council members and 2 commissioners, Park and Rec commissioners, to an ad hoc committee to continue the studies and then report back to council. And then last on his list is the feasibility study for the 3 facilities. And Director Walker already mentioned the restrictions on Georgie Duke. And let's see, so that, I guess that was presented to the council at the January 26th council meeting, and along with the performa. And the recommended action there was taken by the council authorizing the mayor, I guess that's the same thing, to continue the studies and report back to the council. I have a few, you got it up on the screen, thank you, Mel. Yeah. A few photos to share, just kind of a photo report, maybe is the way to put it. This is a follow-up at the December meeting. Vice Chair Greaves inquired about the walkway at Meadowlands Park. And let's see, let me go to the next slide there. There we go. In the background on this slide here, what's fenced is the school's property. And then to the left of that fence is Meadowlands Park. So what this view is looking west. And in the background, you can just see the concrete walk that was originally built with the original construction of the park, and it just dead ends. because the thought was, that was before Callison was built, that being that it was a joint use facility, that walk would then go over onto the school property and wrap around and continue back to the sidewalk, making a complete loop. Well, that plan was never realized when the school was developed, and so that walkway just makes a dead end right into the fence. Makes no sense. But in this photo, you can also see, I think it was the school district, paved a very narrow strip walkway that connects up onto that concrete walkway and leads into their fenced enclosure. The fencing is then closed during the school day. Unfortunately, they installed the fence not on the property line. These red ribbons that you see here, where our surveyors, city surveyors, took a look at the site and decided this is where the property line actually is. So even if we wanted to complete our walk, we're restricted. If we were to live with where they put the fence, it's a fairly narrow, let me get this cursor working here, between our backstop and the fence. There's not a lot of room to put that walkway in. So we've had some brief conversations. This was done back in 2015 with the school district about whether the fence should be put back on their property. That was what we felt really needed to happen, is put the fence back on the property line, and then we would, through a CIP, would complete that walkway and bring it back out to the sidewalk out on the road. That was to be handled through Public Works. Like I mentioned, it was CIP, so CIP has to, it's a certain dollar value that a project attains to become in the CIP process. If it was just a couple $100 repair project or something, it would never qualify for that. But putting in all this concrete and possibly moving fence, it gets to be very expensive. We're talking thousands of dollars. So that project got set aside, and we had some staff turnover at in engineering, and it didn't get on that list. And that was folks were talking earlier about, the follow-up on that. And so this is basically where it stands today. Is we would need to reapproach the school district, and there's been staff turnover there too, to say, can you please move your fence off of our property so we can schedule a project to put in that concrete. And one additional thing that Socorro touched on, but she didn't really elaborate very much, is that just because we define it as a project doesn't mean we can fund it. When you're talking a project that's multiple thousands of dollars, one of the first things we have to do is say, well, how are we going to fund this? We can't use DIF because all the homes in this area are built out. They've paid into that neighborhood park, and there isn't any more money to do that. It could be, possibly looked at through Measure M, possibly general fund, but the big ticket items like this would have to go into the process of being evaluated and saying, well, is that a high priority for us or is it a low priority? Certainly something that has liability for the city is going to kick up the importance of that project. So I'm just responding to what happened, the question that was raised at the last meeting. I think from our standpoint, staff standpoint, it needs to be put back on that list because it's definitely something we want to do. But at this point, I couldn't tell City Council how to fund it. We would have to do some searching and look for that and find out how much money are we talking? Is it 50,000? Is it 100,000? What value are we looking for? So I'm just going to continue here if I can. You've seen this slide before, and actually I got 4 of them here. This is a volunteer group that did all the cleanup work twice now, and they're actually scheduling for another cleanup in April for more of the graffiti removal up in the Browns Valley open space. This is the status of the Play for All Park as of this afternoon. So the dozer that you see there is grading the site. It's got a leveling site on it, or not a site, but electronic device that helps to flatten out the site. They're ripping it, finding all the old garbage that, this has been farmed for many years, so there's a lot of debris and stuff in there. And they're getting ready to put the underground work in. These photos were taken this afternoon of what we think will be called Nasha Mesto Park. So you can see the underground work, all the drainage, water lines, major water lines, sewer, all that is installed, and the contractor, which is Lister Construction, has completed most of the concrete work. This path here will be the DG running path around the perimeter. And that's the last shot there. And no, I'm not doing yoga. I actually was trying to get a higher view of actually what the park looks like there. What you're looking at is that wide path that would connect to the future school, allowing the neighborhoods to the west to have access without having to go all the way around the block. That was a design component we put into the park early on. Oh, and by the way, the name Nasha Mesto, that was something that came before the commission a long time ago. We've had multiple names that have been piling up. I have not had time to get them to council for their final approval. So this is pushing me. Now I need to because the sign has to be ordered. So we need to make sure that we can tell the contractor what name to put on the sign. That's the end of that. Can you pull up the next one? Yeah. I have some more. Save that till later, yeah. Let's do the revised signage. I'll go to the photo first.
This?
No.
That's what we just had up. I don't think you have a photo.
Okay, sorry. A little disorganized here. I promised to come back to the commission with after the city council approved the ordinance that was required to do a number of changes to our animal ordinance, not the least of which I laughing refer to as allowing people to have their dog off-leash within the off-leash area, but it's true. We wanted to clean up a bunch of those things.
Oops, sorry.
Yep, that's exactly it. Thank you. Thank you very much. So this is the sign that's currently up at the new Centennial Dog Park. What's in red, I superimposed on the sign. The new ordinance does not change any of these rules, but it gives teeth to some of the things that we wanted to give teeth to, so they're actually enforceable. And so what you see in the red there now, well, let me just start with the very first bullet. That's already in our code. So we were able, on this sign, we were able to reference the municipal code section there. The next one, we included in the new ordinance so that people can't just throw their dog in the off-leash area and then go shopping. Sometimes that happens. So now that actually you can not only say, yes, that's a rule, but it's actually in city code, it's codified. The next one, I expect you may want to have more discussion of this. This is not enforceable by city code. It's a recommendation. And I'll come back to that later, but if I were to remake this sign today, I would put that at the bottom of the sign just because it's not an enforceable item, it's a recommendation. The next one, this is for the safety of all people and dogs and everything. That now is codified, and so the little red municipal code reference tells either a person who wants to know where do I find that in the code, or if for some reason it needs to be enforced and you have an animal control officer there, they can go right to it. This is what I'm citing you for. The next item, don't bring any kind of food or glass containers in the off-leash area. Lots of discussion about this, but we don't want to be enforcing these kinds of things. If somebody brings a dog biscuit into the yard for training and it doesn't bother anybody, it's okay, but it would be a recommendation. We can't really control those kinds of things. And then the last two, this is a really important one that we wanted to make sure was enforceable. So if there was some sort of aggression shown, the owner is responsible for that dog. And if the dog is showing any kind of aggression, they're responsible to get him out of there. So that's codified. And then the last one, you know what, I think I messed up here. I think that's actually, those are existing codes that I would put on the sign, but they weren't in the new ordinance. So we had existing littering and the one is in the park section, the 1228.090, about picking up after your pet. So all those things would be added to the sign to save costs. I propose on just leaving these signs in place and getting little stickers to add on there, and that should, those signs should last several years without having to do anything more to them. Now, if you could go to the next shot, the PDF, yeah. So this is the same information, just slightly ordered. As I mentioned before, we are asking up front to please observe the following, and then we give the enforceable the rules that are enforceable through our ordinance, and then at the bottom we include those 2 recommendations. And so this would be a great time, I guess, if there's any questions about how we're proceeding on this to ask me.
Thank you. Commissioner Palmer?
So I saw a sign. Is it already made as a sign?
When we opened Centennial Park, we had to post, well, we didn't have to, but it was advisable to post some rules. And so we posted the rules as we thought they were going to turn out, but we couldn't, because it hadn't gone through the whole ordinance process, we couldn't reference the codes that were controlling those rules. Now we can.
Was it supposed to come, I thought it was supposed to come through us, because I remember you gave a presentation, and then you said later on this was going to come to us for a discussion and approval.
So it did. It came to you as the draft ordinance came to the commission. I can't remember. I think, was that November, the November meeting? And then the commission voted on it, voted on taking that ordinance on to council. The council's process is they need to have a first reading and then a second reading on it. And that was done. And that covered the legal aspect of it. So those rules that we wanted to make enforceable are now in code. Now, how we actually implement those, how we put them on the sign, that's usually a staff decision. We have signs up at all of our facilities saying everything from, I don't know, don't run on the pool deck, right? I honestly don't know if that's in our code, but we put a sign up that said it's for your safety. Don't run on the wet deck, right? To me, this falls in the similar ordinance, similar track. These are the rules that both the committee, the Citizens Committee, addressed and grappled with for many months, actually. And I had made periodic presentations to the commission too on the progress of that committee. And so now we have those ordinances, which are the first 5 items shown here. And so what you see on the screen now is the proposed sign that I would like to post at Centennial Park in any future dog park that we build.
Director, where am I going blank?
Director Walker.
Andrea, because I'm totally going blank here. Because remember the meeting that was the 4-hour meeting? Hugh presented on 2 pieces of the dog park. And he talked about this section, and please help me here, you guys, but he talked about this section, and then we were talking about the different numbers, and he said, but we're not voting on this today, we're voting on this other piece. And I was like, oh my goodness, because we spent so much time on this. And he said this would be brought to us later to vote on. Am I missing something?
I remember we were voting on the ordinance, but I do remember saying that, talking about the interim rules that have to be put up in order to prevent liability as we open up the dog park. And that was important to have some rules set out there, and we were voting on the ordinance piece.
So is this going to be brought to us is this going to be put as an agenda item for us to vote on?
I don't see any reason for it. So you're talking about the previous meeting. Yes, you're right that not the previous meeting, this was
in November.
October 2nd. I'm looking at the minutes here, and it says that the commission recommended that city council consider and approve the draft ordinance. And there was actually an amendment made to that which I totally agreed with, was giving a little more leeway up to 2 years, if you remember, as opposed to being exactly 2 years. So it puts a little bit of opportunity to soften the requirement if a dog is deemed potentially dangerous. And so that was the extent of the commission's, of our request for commission input on the ordinance. And that occurred after we opened Centennial Dog Park. So that previous picture you saw, we had to do something to say, hey, you new dog owners, you've got this new dog park, and we were a little behind. We hadn't got that ordinance created in time, but we were able to post recommended rules for those people who are using the park up till today. So I'm not following are you saying you wanted to see the sign itself, or are you asking something about the ordinance?
I thought that this was coming to us to vote on these rules, because we had talked about it, but since it wasn't an agenda item, this was going to come back to us. I do remember this being an interim sign, but that this was going to come to us, because I remember there was a large discussion on this, and this was the reason why we have been re-educating ourselves, because we veered off on this part, and this wasn't the part that we were voting on, and this was supposed to come back to us to vote on. Am I wrong?
I think when they said interim sign, it was until they can get the codes updated to accurately reflect, right? Like, so I see, we were voting on the ordinance, and then the interim sign was, we have to put something up for liability purposes, and then we'll update it when we have all the codes set.
So the commission asked, and that's why I'm here tonight, to bring the proposed signs in front of the commission.
It's not an agenda.
I think Commissioner
If you disagree with what I'm showing you here, and you want to agendize it, you can certainly ask for that. I would say it's a little unusual, because we don't typically ask the commission to weigh in on how we word signs. But that's not my call. That's
Commissioner Greaves.
Well, my recollection of our past meetings, what we talked about the sign was the signs at the Lagoon Valley Dog Park are way too wordy. People don't read them, therefore they don't follow the rules. So the general consensus was, yes, shorten the sign to, rules that can be easily followed. I don't recall any particular discussion about the sign. I think you're absolutely right. We don't need to get into that level of detail. I think if Commissioner Palmer has some specifics that she wants, then she should probably get with you, off meeting and discuss that. I don't think this is the kind of level of detail that we should really be concerning ourselves with. But that's just my opinion. I think you've done a wonderful job. I think it's great the way it is. Thank you.
And I think too, also, if there's if anyone dissents or with anything that's listed in there, we could add it to the meeting minutes if you want. And that with that, I'm going to call on Commissioner Ramos.
What I'm remembering, and I think what you're referring to, Commissioner Palmer, is the age limit, the 16. We had a vigorous debate, and we were going to come back to make that a more official discussion. Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The minutes don't record that specifically, but yes, I totally agree that we had a long discussion about that. In the October meeting, though, staff explained that the issue of the age difference was, we were looking at solving that problem rather than codifying and saying someone under 16 can't, or whatever age, can't go in the dog park, can't use the dog park. We said, let's take a results-based approach. And that was part of the whole thing that fed into finding an in-between way of deeming an animal either dangerous or not dangerous. So that, I mean, that potentially dangerous helps the city or the Humane Animal Services deal with a dog that might not normally be aggressive, but did bite somebody. I mean, I've been bitten by my own dog, you know, but it's not an aggressive dog. Those types of incidents is a results-based thing. So if you have a handler who's whatever age, and I think I pointed out in our discussion that, you know, my kids have been in 4-H, and I've seen some of these kids who are very young handle animals of various kinds with such expertise, it just blows you away. And likewise, we have dealt with much older people who may be a first-time animal owner who have no clue how to deal with their dog. And so how does it behoove us to say it's the right age is 12 or 14 or 16 or 18 or 21 or whatever, but rather let's see how that person handles it.
Before we get into, you know, a debate, I know it's not on the agenda. We want to stay consistent because this isn't on the agenda. But if we were to discuss, if the commission wanted to have a further discussion about the age, we could of course come to consensus and add that to the agenda. And then Andrew, would you like to chime in, or was that?
I just wanted to caution the chairperson that we're getting a little bit into the details of specific components of the sign. And if the commission wants to have those discussions, I recommend that you go ahead and agendize it for a later meeting so the public can be present to comment on that if they wish.
Thank you for that. And so what is the take? Do we, as a commission, would we like to add this to a future agenda to discuss the rules? Anyone? No? Okay. So since the commission doesn't want to continue to discuss it, unless did you want to chime in? Commissioner Rucker. Why is it going? Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. I also don't want to get into the weeds. If I recall, this is not enforceable, even if we change the age limits, it is not enforceable, is that correct?
That's correct. Notice there is no reference code after that section.
Okay, that's what I recall from that November meeting, because I was certainly concerned, but then I believe once you brought that up, it was kind of like, if we change the age anyway, it's not enforceable. That's what I recall. That's how I remember saying like, okay. Like,
correct.
I was fine, but
it's a recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So seeing it doesn't look like we want to revisit this, and that mostly everyone's in support of the rules regarding that. So any other questions or comments about Hugh's presentation? No? Okay, great. Oh, Commissioner Rucker. Oh.
Thank you. Sorry, I did have one question. For the new mobile stage?
Yes.
Did you say June 1st is the day that it's going to?
That's what I recall. Let me check. Well, it says first week in June.
Okay. I mean, is there any concern with it coming after Fiesta Days, which is such a huge event for our city?
Concern? Yeah, but I don't want to get in the detail. I don't know.
Answer that.
Oh, okay, go ahead now.
So we still are in possession of the existing stage, and so that's primarily what we'd be using. So for Fiesta Days, we'll probably utilize that stage that we know is working, operational. The folks who have been running that event are familiar with it. Our staff are familiar with it. We're going to need some training before we can utilize that stage, and we'll be focused on that.
Okay.
The new one, yes.
Okay,
so,
cool. As long as it's safe.
Yeah, cool. That's the plan.
Cool. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner McMahon?
Yes, Hugh, thank you very much, as always. I want to say this also, I've had the opportunity to work with Hugh along with Melissa from Visit Vacaville. Visit Vacaville is planning the 8th through the 15th of February is I Love Vacaville Week. So Hugh has worked very hard and put a lengthy list together for some volunteer projects throughout Vacaville. A lot of them are parks, as well as Lagoon Valley and Peña Adobe. So there is a community give back day this Saturday, and there's, I think, 25 or 30 of our citizens that are actually going in and doing some volunteer work for 4 or 5 hours on Saturday, working in our parks and in different spots of the town. So Hugh, thank you very much. I know that You've been instrumental in that, and we appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hugh.
Would you like to see photos of some of those or some of those projects?
Yes, absolutely.
I can throw through them real quick.
Thank
This
you.
doesn't represent them all, but it gives a flavor for what might be addressed. In this photo, you can see that the wood chips at the Great Wonders need to be reallocated. So like under the swings and slides, those great wear spots, this is something that is a constant drain on maintenance to have to be doing this all the time. And the wood chips get, just by natural play, they get kicked up against the fence and end up actually outside the fence in some cases. So that's one project. Here you can see on the left a crepe myrtle tree that was planted with the build back in 2008. And in the other planter, it's gone. The tree was vandalized, and that we hope to replace it. This is our own creek walk container. It looks really shabby and kind of embarrassing, so we're hoping we can clean it and paint it. Same thing with the existing stage up there. It used to have a nice stone veneer on it, and most of that stone is, well, I guess all of it now is gone. I didn't realize it all was, and we would clean that up. Another project is, speaking of chip reallocation, unfortunately the dog park at Centennial didn't fund putting a border along the southern edge of the fence, and so we had a great big wind. I don't remember the date of that, July 28th, something like that, and it blew chips all over the place. So we're hoping to get those back in place, and that was before they had a chance to get wet and compact it a little bit. Another project you can see here, this is some of the old barrier between the sand layers that has come up to the surface, and that can be a tripping issue, so we're going to go in there and remove that. This is another liability concern we want to take care of. It's the old harvester. It's the last of all of the equipment that was actually not donated to the museum in Sassoon or Fairfield, so we need to clean that up. And this is a sheller that is totally degraded. It'll be removed and replaced with some iron farm pieces that won't decay in the rain and the wind. Weeding project, replacement of this board at the Lagoon Valley Dog Park, doing some cleanup around all the new trees that the Rotary Club planted a year ago. It's hard to deal with that cage that you see there. It keeps the beavers from eating the trees, but then that causes a new problem. Now, how do you deal with the weeds that are inside? So, a painting project, there's actually just a couple of those things. I guess that's the end of those. So that gives you a flavor for what people might be working on. And just to kind of tag onto what was asked about with the volunteer projects, all those people, anytime anybody uses a tool, hand tool or otherwise, we have them sign a waiver form to protect the city on that liability, unless they're doing something that your average user in the park could do. Like if they're just going out and picking up trash, we don't ask them to sign a waiver form because anybody can go pick up trash, and sometimes people do. So there's kind of it's part of the understanding what a person is trying to offer to the city in order for us to help guide them through the process and make sure that they can be successful in what they want to do. I have one other, getting late, I have one other thing you might be interested in seeing, and that's kind of just let me ask the chair, since it is getting late. I also have a summary of all of our park projects that I could report on if you want to see that.
I would say that's up to the commission. What do you guys want? Summary of the park projects? Sure, if you want to go ahead.
Okay.
Sure.
So, thank you. Mel's over here helping me with the new software. Hardware too. So this is in our general plan, the 2015 general plan, and it shows the locations of all the new parks, all the future, not just parks, some cases it's future acreage to be developed. In the northeast corner of the city, these here, I'm not going to even talk about these now because they are so far in the future that we don't have any plans underway. But I'll just run through all these other parks that you see, including Centennial, the one over at used to be an expansion of Hemlock, and now we think it's going to be Dreamers Park. We'll run through those real quickly just to give you a quick idea on them. You know about Corderos, that was developed a couple of years ago, so that's done. In North Village also, so that was, Corderos is this park right here. That's completed. But that's an Area Plan 1, which is basically south of the creek. Area Plan 2 is all this future development up here, and so we have another park to be master planned up there. And there's, as with as what happened at Corderos, there was a lot of changes made, and so there, in the specific plan for North Village, there was just a concept plan developed, gave you a quick idea. It's just a neighborhood park, shouldn't be too controversial, but now we see that the developer has need for more detention. And so possibly that park will be expanded and rolled over into a joint use area with some detention, which to the casual observer, if it's done right, can look like a much larger park. This is just a quick look at our current status on the Centennial Park concept plan. That'll be coming, by the way, that'll be coming, a more refined view of this will be coming to the commission for in-depth discussion in the near future. This is the master plan for Dreamers Park in the Farmstead subdivision, and that's what I referred to as the Hemlock Edition. And you may recall that was reduced from a 6-acre future park down to a 3-acre, very much naturalized park. And if you drive by on North Orchard today, you'll see that the contractor has removed all of the trees on site that were to be removed, and the trees that were identified in this plan to be kept are there now. And it's very interesting because very seldom do you get to build a new park and say, I want that tree and that tree and that tree, and it create instant shade. It's a wonderful opportunity to do that. We are dealing with some trees that haven't always been cared for real well. Some of them are a little odd shaped, but if you drive by there today, you can look off to the east and see a little bit of what the park is going to look like. This is what we think will be Nasha Mesto Park, and I showed you the slides on that. So that's under, that's under construction right now. And then the Play for All Park, I also showed you a slide on that. That's located in this intersection here of Elmira and with Leisure Town Road. So that's under construction. The area to the east will be some sort of expansion. That has not been master planned, so what you see here, it'll probably end up looking very different than that. I think that's the last of my slides. Oh, no, there's an enlargement of the Play for All Park. And, oh yeah, almost forgot. Roberts Ranch. Some changes here. This is a very exciting park because this was one that the developer was very pro-park, you may recall, and he is actually taxing himself, if I may use that term, so that every home that's built in his subdivision is paying an additional $1,000 toward the development of this park. And that's very unusual. We also don't have to pay for the land for this park because that'll be dedicated. So that gives us a lot more working capital to work with. The entire, just to refresh your memories, this entire area here is not technically parkland. It's only this core area and then the dog park area down to the south. Uh-oh, what did I do? This mouse has about 1,000 controls on it. Shouldn't even touch it. This is, I realize it's not colored, but this is actually under construction too. So here's the dog, this is Fry Road here. So this is the very southern end of the Roberts Ranch subdivision. And this is phase one. The developer very much wanted to have the park constructed along with the homes. That's an ideal situation. It makes a park planner's heart happy when a developer wants to work with you that way. So we're getting some great help there. And then Magnolia Park, as you know, the western portion has been in service for a number of years now. If you read our report from our consultant, this is one of the 5 top or most often visited parks in Vacaville. Extremely popular, not only with Vacavillians, but with people from outside. Are we Vacavillians? I'm not sure. Some changes here need to be made. The fire station, when they constructed, they did not use the Vanden Road right away, so we're going to add that to the park. We know now that there's just how popular and the unmet need for covered picnic spaces, along with a restroom and a really nice playground, are highly desired, highly sought after. So we anticipate adding it instead of the gazebo, probably another covered picnic shelter. That's yet to be decided. And then we'll revisit all of this existing master plan here, and that'll be something certainly that comes before the commission. Oh, don't see that one. A very small park, I don't know why this didn't pop up, but a very small park that's northeast of Magnolia Park. I apologize for this. 1.3 acre park. Is that one there? Huh. Can you open it and drag it? That was one that was supposed to be built by the developer, and we're kind of getting hit with the cost of maintaining parks again. So I don't know the outcome. I can't really report very much to you on that. I don't have a master plan for it. But that's something that we are in the staff is grappling with right now. I think I had one more. Oh yeah, there we go. And finally, Lagoon Valley. We get requests about this all the time. What is happening out there? So Triad is the new owner of the project, and they have until May 15th to start moving dirt. The subdivision, to reemphasize, and this frequently people still ask, well, are they going to be building in the park? And the answer is no. They're going to be building south of the park, but some of the infrastructure would necessarily go through the park. And that's where the park the portion of the construction that takes place in the park we'll have to coordinate very carefully with this developer, just like we tried with the previous one, to make sure that it won't interrupt or has the minimal impact on our regular park use. So that completes my quick overview of all the status of all of our planned parks. Any questions about any of that?
Great, thank you so much for presenting on those. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Chang?
Thank you very much for your presentation. I think these are all the excellent work you have done. Really, thank you very much. And
my pleasure.
All this information's on the city website where the community could have a glimpse of it?
Portions of it. Mm-hmm. Well, certainly the general plan is available on the city's website. Things like major developments like Roberts Ranch and Lagoon Valley, North Village, those are all available on the city's website. I think there's a section on the Play for All Park there. Pretty sure there is. So I don't want to unilaterally say yes at all it's there, but most of it is.
I think it's good to make it known because I think as a Vacavillian, you call it, we are very proud of it. And then, it's good to let people know Vacaville is a very unique city. We do have so many parks, right? I think if you could publicize it, really good. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last thing.
If you can publicize it, yeah, in the social media,
I will talk to Director Walker about that and see what way to go on that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great, any other questions, comments? No, great, thank you very much for the presentation. Moving on to item 11, reports of Recreation Manager Reggie Hubbard.
You got it already, okay.
Thank you, Commission Chair. Just a few events that are coming up here pretty soon. You can see on your screen we have the father-daughter dance. That's actually this coming Saturday. So it's a great way to start. I love Vacaville Week too. After you do volunteer and you go out and you have your daughter out at the dance, Commissioner Rucker, I know I'll see you there. Probably with some ice cream in hand. But that is at the Three Oaks Community Center this Friday from 7 to 9. There'll be light refreshments. It's $25, $10 for each additional guest or child. I think this is the second year we've done this. We just did our mother-daughter dance as well, so these are becoming very popular. So if you can come out and you want to dance with your daughter, come on out and we'll sure play some good music for you. Of course, this is Black History Month, so we do have a Black History Month celebration at the McBride Senior Center this month, similar to the Chinese New Year that we had, which sold out. We had over 150 individuals come and celebrate Chinese New Year. So we'll have poetry, we have music, we have different things going on at the McBride Senior Center. Very affordable, $9 per person. This is February 22nd from 12 to 2, so you can come out and check that out as well. And the last event that we have coming up is our second annual VacaCon event. Last year, this was a tremendous success. It's March 7th from 10 to 4. It's a play on Comic-Con where folks come out and dress up and do different things. They have art, they have the art gallery, you can have vendors, guest speakers, cosplay, all sorts of activities. I think we had a couple thousand people come through United Community Center last year, so we had to expand it. So this year we're also using the library and we're using the theater as well to expand this event. So this is really a good event. This thing is really taken off. So if you can come March 7th, 10 to 4, you'll have a great time. Hugh mentioned earlier that he's talking about Lagoon Valley Park. And this year we did get a park ranger approved in the budget, and we will be interviewing for that position tomorrow. So we'll have some eyes and ears out at Lagoon Valley Park here pretty soon. Hopefully it'll start the spring. So we're really excited about that. So that completes my report, and I can answer any questions for you.
Great. Commissioner McMahon?
Yes, thank you, Reggie. I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but I couldn't help but notice past Larson and Nelson and even Centennial, it looks like our maintenance crews are out there doing a lot of work on some of the baseball diamonds as well as the softball diamonds. Can you give us an update on that?
Well, this is, of course, baseball season's coming. All the allocations, and Socorro is not here. She could speak more on that. The allocations should be going out here to all the leagues. And so Public Works is usually working really hard at this time to get all the leagues on the field for practices. I'm not aware of any major projects they were doing on any of the specific fields, but I know they make every attempt to get the leagues on the fields by February 1st, no later than February 15th, but it always depends on the weather. Right. But I know they've been working hard to get all the fields playable and ready for all the leagues at this time.
Excellent. Well, thank you to everybody involved and getting those fields ready for the kickoff of softball and baseball.
Yeah, I will relay that to the maintenance folks.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Graves?
Reggie, the event that you had up there for February 22nd, the Black History Month event, it said that tickets had to be purchased by 1/24. We're past that.
No.
Are the tickets still available?
Tickets are still available. Yes. Sorry. We like to get a head count for the food and the refreshments and things like that, but you can still get tickets, yeah.
All right.
Thanks for catching that.
Any other questions and comments? No, all right, great. Moving on. Thank you very much, Reggie. Moving on to reports of director, Carrie Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have an awful lot to report. I did want to share just to kind of piggyback on Commissioner McMahon's questions and Reggie's comments. We did have individual meetings with the various baseball and softball leagues, and the agenda included, touching base on the agreements, if there were any questions on the agreements, timelines, and, if they work for the leagues. One of the most significant being, their postseason play and how comfortable, what's a good date for them to be able to submit that information to us, so we know how many and which fields to allocate for that. And we did have park supervisors at all of those meetings, which was really nice, so that those individuals representing the leagues had that one-on-one FaceTime with the park supervisors. So there was dialogue related to that, information shared about new bases that are going to be used this upcoming year. We did talk about security and safety concerns at all of the various complexes. One of the things that we are doing right now is I think it's both Nelson and Centennial that don't have the delayed switch when they turn their field lights off. They go off immediately. So we're looking into getting some type of a timer so that there can be a delay when those lights go off, just to provide a little, illumination so that people can get to their cars and feel a little more, safe and secure in doing that. So I thought they were positive meetings. I hope the leagues felt that way as well. And that's all that I have.
Great, thank you. Any questions, comments? Thank you very much, Director Walker. Reports of commission, we'll just go down. Commissioner Rucker? Oops.
Thank you much. I noticed today through social media that today was National Girls and Women in Sports Day, which I thought was awesome. I know sports, for me, and just a lot of people who've done it, just instills confidence and just really builds character. I think, unlike a lot of other things can do, unfortunately, there's a lot of women athletes who don't get nearly the recognition nor the respect that they deserve within their fields of expertise. So ultimately, I just want to say I'm just so thankful to be a part of a Parks and Recreation department that really invests in youth sports, especially for all kids, but especially for young women. I'm really hoping that more of us in the city and communities together can really come together to continue to invest in sports for young girls, just like the late great Kobe Bryant did with his Mamba Sports Academy. So I just want to thank everybody part of this department and just encourage all of our young women athletes to continue to be great.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Chang?
No, nothing to report.
Commissioner Ramos?
Nothing to report.
Commissioner McMahon?
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Greaves?
I have nothing.
All right. Great. And I have nothing to report, but thank you all for being here, and thank you for coming out and showing your support for Vacaville. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.